I'll go to the Q&A. Oh, there's no questions yet. So maybe I'll take this advantage. That's why I was writing questions up for everyone here. Okay, and I will first ask Simeon. A lot of econometrics requires that you're in equilibrium conditions. Okay, but with the cartel situation in the oil industry, how does that affect the equilibrium conditions, and how will that affect your results in your regression equations? Or will it affect your results in your regression equations?
I don't know. I haven't thought about this.
Okay.
Equilibrium, but I don't know. As long as this equilibrium, it doesn't affect the oil price.
Which it
what
does.
You're saying is, do you think it might affect the oil price?
Yes. What I'm saying is, because of the cartelization of oil and OPEC, it may affect the oil price.
In Kazakhstan?
Everywhere in the world.
Ah, you mean the
and
global?
And it's also going to affect the exports as well.
Global.
And it's going to affect the exports as well, because it's limitation of exports.
Yeah, so if they agree to tighten the, now, in theory, I also have to control for the volume also.
Yes.
I'm assuming that the volume is constant. I'm assuming that the volume is constant.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was thinking as well, okay? So it's not just price, it's actually volume that moves around as well.
Yes, so I need to, because I had a hard time finding oil exports or quarterly data, right? And I just used the oil price for simplicity. And I kind of made an assumption that the volume stays the same throughout this.
Okay. It's just, I like throwing wrenches into people's research, Simeon. Okay.
Yes, no, it's a good wrench because I thought about it also, but I just didn't have, I think there's data on volumes that I can use. I can multiply by the oil price.
Okay.
Okay. But then the oil price is different in Kazakhstan a little bit. I think it's way cheaper here. I think it's $20 a barrel.
Well, it depends on, because it depends on the quality. You can get premium. Kashagan, there's a premium. No, in Karachaganak it's a premium. In Kashagan, or Tengiz, it's a little lower because of the quality of oil.
And so even if I have the oil price in global, I cannot get oil exports exactly.
Yeah.
Which is what I need is oil exports.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Real oil exports in dollars.
In volume, yeah. In volume, yeah. Or real, or whatever. Okay. I'll stop there. The next question is for Farhat, Aidana, and Galim. How would you assess the residential buildings occupied mostly by low-income families, which usually are overcrowded and less opportunity to follow anti-COVID-19 sanitary rules?
Okay, thank you very much. This is a quite interesting question. Aslan, thank you very much for asking this. Anyway, this is one of the key questions we are also asking ourselves. And then our project, Pencils, just started. So we are not going to answer. We are not going to try. We will not solve those problems by ourselves. What we are going to do, it is an ongoing project, and we will organize some focused group activities like roundtable discussions with the people at the local level. We will invite them, and we will try to develop solutions together with an engagement of the stakeholders. So our project will continue for the coming 2 years. Actually, we will focus on most of the activities in 2021, and we will spend lots of efforts to find solutions for cultural context, low-income families, and we will particularly focus on Kazakhstan. These are our challenges in our project. So this is a very good question, Aslan. At the moment, we don't have a kind of solution to suggest, but solutions will come later during the progress of the process and the project. Aidana, would you like to add something?
Yes, right now we are actually developing different kind of solutions. For example, we were talking about adaptable housings, maybe separated sanitary like toilets and all this stuff. Probably this could help to low-income families. However, it's still an issue to locate this kind of families in new houses. So yeah, we're in the process.
Salim, do you have anything to add? Okay.
Got a microphone.
No.
Nothing. Okay. Nothing. Okay. Our next question comes from Jenny Janishkizis, and it's to Simeon. I'm curious why in Central Asian countries, including Russia, our currency rates keep depreciating regardless of the economic recession or in good economic growth time. What are the main factors? Possibly to frame it in a simple public policy terms.
The main one is it depends on the currency, which the exchange rate you're talking about. Is it the dollar? If it's the dollar, then it depends on the inflation rates between the dollar and the tenge. And if there's very high inflation rate here relative to the US, then things will get more expensive here. And logically, the exchange rate will have to depreciate. And this is called relative PPP. So relative PPP will hold. Otherwise, there might be some arbitrage opportunities that can potentially, if it doesn't hold, that will force it to hold. So the simple answer is just depends on the inflation rates in the US and in Kazakhstan. So that's why the exchange rates keep depreciating here, because the inflation rates are much higher here. This is kind of like a long-term.
Good, thank you. Okay, the next one is from Professor Dina Sharipova of GSPP, and it's directed at Kuwait. The socialist system in the USSR was very unfriendly to the environment. For example, the Aral Sea, soil erosion, etc. If you believe that the neoliberal NO framework should be reevaluated, what are the alternatives?
Okay, thank you, Dina, for this question. Thank you, Peter. Oh, first of all, the topic of my presentation, remember, wasn't about socialism. It goes a little bit beyond today's discussion. However, I do appreciate that there are talks when you criticize the current status quo, especially finance capitalism, and then the next question is like, so what do you offer? Do you offer us like North Korean style or something like Cuban style socialism? Not at all. We have to remember that yes, in the USSR created, especially for this country as well, for Kazakhstan, a lot of environmental problems, which have like a global impact now, like Aral Sea, rightly pointed out. However, we have to remember that socialism was USSR, Soviet Union actually discredited the ideas of democratic socialism. There wasn't socialist movement. That was a totalitarian system, okay, with some elements of state-run economy. So, and as to prove that, we can observe now for the last 20 years, especially the last 5-10 years, that there is a global shift towards leftist thinking, that even in the countries of with a very unique political culture like United States, where socialist idea never was like kind of admitted, there hasn't been any friendly attitude towards it. Even in this country, in the USSR, there's an understanding that it's only under regulated capitalism of the strong social democracies that will be able to address the challenges of the sustainable development. So yes, to the question, my answer is that this current status, the finance capitalism, as some prominent researchers like Stiglitz, Krugman, or Piketty talks about, or Milanovic, that this for sure, this is a different form of capitalism. This is a capitalism of the 19th century, right? Very predatory one, and it is implemented in countries like Kazakhstan, unfortunately. This is capitalism we read about in Dickens' stories, right? It's at the beginning of the 20th century. And by the way, the income inequality now, globally, and in most of the countries, in developed countries as well, and developing low-income countries, middle-income countries, is the same now almost like it used to be before the the First World War. Okay, so and I just have to remind you that these two global wars, they were the consequences of a very contradictory capitalist mode of production which existed at that time. So we are moving actually towards, unfortunately, this catastrophic consequences. So I hope I answered that question.
Okay, perfect. All the rest of the questions are directed at Kuat, so I'm going to take my role as the moderator and use some power and ask Kanat a question with his research. So Kanat, very interesting research. I was just curious about your omission of the concept called compensating differentials. And this is some work done by Rosen and Roback, and Rosen in the 1970s and Roback in the 1980s. And what they say is that people are willing to accept lower wages to live in better places and want higher wages to have jobs in more dangerous settings. And so it seems that you've missed this component in your research. You're assuming that Kazakhstan is a homogeneous workplace. And I have some issues with that. And so how can you deal with this problem in your research?
Thank you, Peter, for your question. It's especially interesting. I'm happy to hear your reaction as a leading expert in the field and leading expert in Kazakhstan. So as a macroeconomist, I simplify the things. So yeah, you are right. I homogenize. I say that there is no difference in regions. There is no difference in the level of how can I say, what's called the living conditions. For example, Atrao may be like a harsh place to live, and people go there to earn money. And I simplify as a macroeconomist. I say, let's say the regions are homogeneous, and I only analyze the most important factors in macroeconomics, which are the factor of productions and human and physical capital, and maybe TFP, and the resources. Yeah, I think simplifying sometimes helps to understand the matters more clearly.
Okay, good. Okay, so we'll go back to Kuat because he has many questions, and we'll just go to the next one. And this is again from Jenny Janesh Kizis. Many international experts predict that in the post-COVID time, the increasing role of big governance is expected. They argue that markets could not cope with the pandemic crisis well enough. How would you address the role of big governance and the neoliberal economics in the post-COVID time?
Wonderful question, Jenny. Thank you very much. Really wonderful. Well, I have to admit that I believe that the idea of the so-called big government is exaggerated. Yes, it is exaggerated. As I mentioned in my presentation, after the World War II, for 50 years, there was the absolutely different world of the global economic governance, mostly with the usage of, as you know, of Keynesian demand management usage, and Bretton Woods financial institutions, which regulated capitalism, right, and regulated over the mode of production more or less successfully. The data and statistics shows that not only developed countries achieve the level of development of the welfare state, which we know now, but even developing countries, were constantly growing and achieved many social progressive reforms. I'm not building this kind of rosy pictures that everything was so good in 1950s and 1960s. No, there were poverty and there were wars and everything. But the data shows that between 1980s, when the neoliberal policies began, to dominate, and the government there was a withdrawal of the government, right, from the regulation. Then this last 4 years is times of a constant financial crisis, both in developing and developed countries, right? So this is first. As for the big government, again, neoliberals, they very opportunistic, they very capable of manipulating with these ideas. So when they need big government, they always use it. And the last example, global level example, is the financial crisis, 2007 financial crisis. There wasn't any question. Well, of course, we, like some progressive economists, believe that there would be change. But unfortunately, it was the government who interfered, right? And bailed under this so-called too big to fail policies, bailed out all these financial institutions, spending billions and billions, right? Everywhere, in countries like Kazakhstan or in countries as different as Kazakhstan or United States. There was a big government. And for decades before that, they would criticize it and saying that, especially politicians like Reagan, of course, they started this campaign. They would say, the worst enemy is the government, is the state, because it imposes big taxes, it destroys businesses and things like that. So in the same vein, this idea of big government is exaggerated. As we can see now, those countries which preserved strong infrastructure institutions in the healthcare, they are more capable of dealing with the COVID and post-COVID world.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to do it again because I want to share the questions around, and this is my question, and it's to Ferhat, Aydana, and Galim. As an economist, I'm kind of interested in the after effects of the COVID, and one of the after effects I was
You here? No. Peter, are you
Someone's
there?
cooking.
I think we lost him.
Who's cooking?
Илья Санжахов, можешь, пожалуйста?
I think we lost Peter.
Is everything okay?
Oh, we are losing people one by one.
Oh, it's gonna stop now.
Yeah. Yes.
What should we do?